Hey YouTube land, boys and girls. Right now I'm trying to replace the crankshaft position sensor on a 2008 3.5 liter Chevy Impala. GM must have been out of their minds when they put it where they did, because I'm having a heck of a time. It was a pain in the butt even trying to figure out where it was. All of the tutorials I found online were referring to the 3.9 liter, and the 3.5 liter is actually in the same place, but other components aren't, which makes it impossible to see from in the wheel well, and you can only actually see it from under the car. I'll quick show you where it is, but I'll leave it up to you to try to get it out. If I can figure out the best way to get it out, I'll add a second video, but right now I'm breaking my knuckles on this thing, trying to reach my arm around to show you where it is. So 1 second and I'll try to point it out. Okay, so we are in the passenger side wheel well. I have the wheel off, as you can already see and guess. The light is kind of washing it out, but the screwdriver right here, that's a black bracket. It is right behind the black bracket, and it's impossible to see from in the wheel well. The only way to get to it is to go to fish your arm up through and over that and get back there. Now I'll show you another little handy thing while I'm in here. There is a pigtail, if I can see it on the screen. Right here is the pigtail for it, and you can also find it by fishing that pigtail off of this wire loom. They have it all taped up, and you can follow that back to it. Now, the reason this tape is all pulled off is because it has this little gray clip on the cap for it. So before you can get this off of the actual crankshaft position sensor, you have to get the tape off so you can pry that black clip off and then push on this. Push on that little black part there. Now, when it is actually mounted on the crankshaft position sensor, the gray clip and lever are facing the passenger wheel. So if you're reaching in blindly, you're going to be pushing on this side. But to get that tape off, what you're going to want to do is get your longest flathead screwdriver, and from underneath, and I'll show you where to look underneath in a second, from underneath, you're just going to pry that tape off with that flathead screwdriver until you can see that black or that gray clip, and pry that gray clip off with the screwdriver as well, so that you can reach in from in the wheel well to get the actual cap off of the crankshaft position sensor. Now, the reason I'm not making a complete video about how to replace this is because I'm trying all kinds of methods to actually get the 10mm bolt that is holding it in place, to get that out of there. I'm trying to go in from underneath with a angle-headed ratchet, angle-headed box wrench to get to it, and it has to be an angle-headed, because it is mounted at an angle into the engine block. It can't just be a regular flat-headed box wrench, and you'll either need a really long one, or you'll need to put something on the handle of it. I just used electrical tape and taped an extension onto it so that it could reach it from underneath. What I've found is that when I come at it from underneath, I can get the end of the ratcheting box wrench onto it, but when I try to actually move it back and forth to ratchet it off, to unscrew it, it comes off of the head of the bolt. So after that, I tried coming in from above with a 3/8 deep well socket, and if you try doing it that way, it will need to be a deep well socket, because the bolt has a little post on the top of it, so a standard well socket won't work. And I was also able to get the deep well socket onto it with a short extension. I got those two on the 3/8 deep well with the short extension, and I was able to get the actual ratcheting wrench onto it, but I couldn't turn it from this angle. I just couldn't get enough oomph on it to turn it, and when it did finally feel like it was about to break free, it popped off the bolt. I then tried it with a U-joint in that, between the socket and the extension, but with the U-joint on it, I couldn't get it to stay on the bolt long enough for me to get the actual wrench onto it. So, like I said, if I figure out how to get it out, or if I'm able to get it out, I'll add a second video and let you know what works. So far, it's looking like the most difficult part is actually going to be getting that bolt back in there. Because if it's this tough to find a workable angle on the bolt to get it out, getting it in there when your hand can barely reach it is going to be twice as hard. I'll quick slide underneath the car and show you where to actually see the sensor from underneath. Okay guys, sorry about the sudden change in position here, but I had to get just the right position to show you where it is. Now at the bottom of the video here is the transmission pan. That's what is in the bottom of the screen. At the top is the oil pan. Just to the right there, that is the oil plug. So between the two of them, right between, you look up inside, and that black thing right there and the little stud next to it, that is the culprit. So getting up there is the pain in the butt. So I recommend to get the cap off it, come at it from down here with your longest flathead screwdriver and pry that tape back so that you can get access to that clip to remove it. And I'm gonna have to try to get that nut or bolt off. I believe it is a bolt with a threaded head as well, but it's looking like it's just a nut on a threaded stud. So that's it for this video. Good luck getting that removed. I was at least able to show you where it is. If you find a good way to remove it, put it in the comments. And if I find a good way to remove it and get it back in, I actually don't think I'll make a second video. I'll just add it into the comments for you all. So take a look there, and best of luck with your Impala. Okay, next day, post-repair. I called a friend to come over and help me out. Turns out it needed a set of hands on it through the wheel well and a set of eyes on it from underneath to get to it. What we wound up having to do, because there wasn't quite enough room on it to get leverage on it through the wheel well, we had to drop the engine cradle, the back side of the engine cradle. If you haven't done that before, here's how you do it. You'll need a pair of jack stands and your car jack, your jack as well. So jack up the front of the car, put your jack stands on the front, on the cross member on the front of the vehicle, and then your jack you will lower and slide to the back of the engine cradle. I'll show you that here real quick. So we'll put the jack, sorry, yeah, the car is already down, so it's difficult to see. But this is the back of the aluminum engine cradle right here, and there is one of the bolts that's holding the cradle up to the body. There's another one on the other side, right behind the exhaust there. You'll loosen those bolts. You don't need to take them all the way down. You don't need to take them all the way out, but loosen them. You can take it all the way out and then thread it back in a little bit, a few turns in, so that it's still holding, and then slowly lower down the jack so that the cradle drops down. The back side of the cradle will drop down and it will tilt away from the car. That'll give you enough room to get your hand in for a bit more leverage. When you do that, you'll use a 1/4-inch ratchet with a short extension and a deep well 10mm socket. You don't need a U-joint on it. That will allow you to unscrew that bolt. And it is just a threaded stud. It's not a nut on the, or it is a threaded bolt. It's not just a nut on a threaded stud in the engine. So that whole bolt will come out. The nut, it's one piece. The nut is in the middle of it. The whole thing will turn out. Now, to get the actual sensor out, since it has an O-ring on the end of it, where it goes into the engine block and sits in a groove, you can't quite grab it and just pull it out, since that O-ring is holding it in place into the engine block. What you'll want to do with that is, from underneath, you'll use that long-handled flathead screwdriver again and just kind of wedge it between the block and the sensor and turn the handle to pry it out of the block. That's how you'll get that out. Getting it back in, you'll have to go through getting the new sensor in, you'll have to go through the wheel well, and it's easiest if you have the one person under the car again, guiding your hand with the new sensor to get it into the block. I wasn't able to push it into the block because that O-ring, I couldn't get enough leverage on it to push it in. But once we had it in place and as snug as we could by hand, we used that threaded stud and tightened that down again with the 1/4-inch drive ratchet and 10mm deep well. And that, once that snugged up to the new sensor, it pulled the sensor the rest of the way in as we tightened that nut down, or that bolt down. Then getting the clip back on is easy. You just remember that the flat side of it, the side with the actual tab that you have to press to release it, is facing the passenger side wheel well. So that just slides on and clips on. You don't have to put the gray safety clip on after you get it on. So the gray safety clip you can put on it before you put it onto the sensor itself, and then you just push it on. You'll feel it snap in place, and then just give it a little tug to make sure that it's all the way tightened on. But otherwise, that's it. It is something you can do. You can do yourself. It just may be a little uncomfortable if you haven't lowered the engine cradle before. But again, just keep those bolts threaded into the chassis. Those cradle bolts, you don't have to take them all the way out. Once you have the back of the engine cradle lowered and you lowered the jack to let it rest on those bolts again, you can pull the jack out. So it's just hanging on those bolts under there to give the other person or the person underneath a little bit more room on the creeper to be your eyes underneath. So hopefully this helps. It's a pain in the butt job, but we proved it's something you can do at home without having to take it in. So good luck to you, and let me know if you have any other questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Take care.